I am feeling like there's a big door that's ready to open. And I'm gonna open it.
I feel like I've been in a dark room stumbling around looking for something and not knowing there was a door. This is something that I'm going to reflect on because I know that I can't continue without that door.
I am determined to deal with things that I have not dealt with well in my past. I feel like this is just going to help all that.
We are more than our thoughts. Our mind is more than our thoughts. When we stand in that space between thoughts, when our mind is in that state, it's saying, I'm open to learning something new. And then I hear something. Something emerges from the nothing. Something emerges from nothing. We witness something come to mind where nothing was there before, except in the body, in feelings, your true self-freedom. So what we want to know is, what the heck is the state of consciousness? Which means that we have to look inside ourselves. Again, not as some mysterious thing, but simply to find what's already there. Let's look at what a few other people have called this state that you described, that you experienced. Schleiermacher, Friedrich Schleiermacher, the father of modern liberal theology. He said, he defined the state as the experience of the infinite universe in a finite moment of your own life. The experience of the infinite universe in a finite moment of your own life. That was his definition of spirituality. This sense of knowing, this trust, this felt presence. An experience of the infinite universe in a finite moment of your own life. And Schleiermacher said, hello, this is a human capacity. We're born with this capacity, which is why you could tell me a peak experience that you've had. He also called it the natal hour of everything living in religion. There. The natal hour of everything living in religion. The experience, he said, is not a religious experience because that's a social construction. It's Judaic or Christian or Islamic, or it's a faith tradition like Buddhism. Those are social constructions of human experience. That to which they all refer, he said, is this experience of being inextricably interwoven with all of life, the natal hour of everything living in religion. Again, your descriptions of what you felt, the state you were in, why tears came to your eyes, why you felt held, who held you. You don't go theoretical there, you simply knew that you were held. What's said will depend upon whether you're Buddhist or Judaic or Christian or Islamic, but it's referring to the experience of being held. Even atheists will just use these terms, but they simply will not use the word God. And Schleiermacher will say, oh, I see. It's the infinite universe in a finite moment of your own life. Okay, got it. But this is not some, if you will, woo-woo experience, some new age thing. Let's look at the experience of Etty Hillesum. She began a diary 9 months after Hitler invaded the Netherlands and continued her narrative for 2 years. Also preserved were the letters Etty wrote to family and friends from Westerbork, a detention camp in Holland where Jews were held before transport to the death camps of Poland. Etty died in Auschwitz on November 30th, 1943, when she was 29. And here's what she said. All I wanted to say was this: the misery here is quite terrible. And yet, late at night, when the day has slunk away into the depths behind me, I often walk with a spring in my step along the barbed wire fence. And then time and again, it soars straight from my heart. I can't help it. That's just the way it is, like some elementary force, the feeling that life is glorious and magnificent, and that one day we shall be building a whole new world against every new outrage and every fresh horror. We shall put up one more piece of love and goodness. Ultimately, we have just one moral duty to reclaim large areas of peace in ourselves, more and more peace, and to reflect it towards others. And the more peace there is in us, the more peace there will be in our troubled world. Sometimes the most important thing in a whole day is the rest we take between 2 deep breaths. Like some elementary force, the feeling that life is glorious and magnificent. I can't help it. That's just the way it is. What thoughts and feelings come to mind? Where are you now? And if I've asked the wrong question, answer the right one.
I'm sensing, I almost said a need, but it's not a need, it's a desire to, maybe before too much more time goes by, or maybe there's a way we could just take a moment and do this, is to talk about our concentration camp experience, or the things that we carry that will distract us from that feeling that we just can't help, because they're so interwoven in our human experience. They're so important to the joy. I'm thinking of what happened in Buffalo because it's distracting me. I want to weave it in with the story of Robert, and with my capacity to listen to what Kathleen and Teresa are saying. But there's this, I want to say, annoying rat, because there was also a shooting in Orange County this afternoon in a Presbyterian church where someone was killed and many people were taken to the hospital. And I just see the insanity and feel that we can't embrace this sanity without taking that with us. What do we do with it? Do we set it aside for these 2 hours or for these moments, or do we put it in a different pocket, or do we hold them both? Because Buffalo, I grew up very close to where that shooting happened, and I feel It's a distraction to me today. I feel my heart is, I feel guilty leaving all of that behind and jumping into this space that I know really well and that we can get to like that.
I used Eddie's reflections. She was on her way to Auschwitz because it's filled with so much love. And as with empathy, we want to enter into another person's experience absolutely and yet not be flooded. Because otherwise, we have compassion, but we're flooded, so there isn't understanding. Or perhaps even an enormous love that can hold the pain. So the last thing Eddie did in the freight car on her way to Auschwitz, she had her backpack and she took out of it an index card and wrote something on it as a postcard, which she pushed through one of the slits in the wall. And it was found and mailed. So if I can be in that state more and more in this absolutely insane, nutty world, then I can increase the love without distraction. If I'm not in that place, it's as if the plane is going down, my kid's sitting next to me, and I'm trying to put the air mask on his face first. So my hope is that through the work that we do together, we will be like Eddie and say, I just can't help it. That's the way it is. One more piece of love. That's my response, Maggie. What are your responses to what Maggie has to say?
I want to be like Eddie, but I don't know how. I feel more like Maggie, except I feel like what Maggie's talking about, this pain for Buffalo. I have felt like this every day for the past, I don't know when it started. It's been about 5 or 6 years. Um, and I think that it's when, I don't know, I guess the world hasn't all of a sudden changed, but maybe all of a sudden I was able to see things in the world that troubled me. And I saw things in a way that I hadn't seen before and that have interfered with my joy and my ability to tap into that joy and that those inspirational moments are rare, very rare for me nowadays. And so I want to understand Eddie. I want to know how she did what she did, how she was able to feel that, because I don't know how.
My goal is for you to understand Kat, because you have already dipped into that same state in the presence of someone who had just died. You know how to do that. But it seems to me that what we need now are calisthenics, like a workout, so that no matter what's going on, you're still there. You already know how to do it because you have done it. That was your first peak, the peak experience. was that? You didn't say, oh, shucks, I should have left 5 minutes earlier, and then perhaps the man would not have died before I got there. The critic didn't step in. You were pure presence. We want to strengthen that consciousness capacity of yours. You already know how to go there. Our goal is to help you stay there longer, come what may. So, like Eddie, you're not ignoring the barbed wire or even your trip to Auschwitz, but you're still sending postcards of love. That 50 years later, I can read and feel emboldened and helped to stay present. But again, Kat, you already know how to do it. Otherwise, you'd have to say, well, Tandeka, I really just made up that story. I lied.
I kind of I don't want to say I have the opposite problem. My frustration and where my joy is pulled away, or I am not pivoting, is in the kind of everydayness of my life. In caring for an aging mother-in-law and just the daily struggle, you know, which you know, in comparison to other people's lives, I have a pretty sweet gig here, but it does wear me down. So I need to find my joy in the everyday, so that I'm not like just basically irritated by the things in my life. But I do, you know, not to make light of other situations, I do feel deeply overwhelmed by the world. And my current solution to that is to just stop looking at the news. But I still find things out, like I knew about Buffalo, and you know, things do filter in, but yeah, I just choose not to listen most of the time, because it does become very overwhelming very quickly.
I find joyfulness different, the state of joyfulness different from the state of peace, peacefulness. A peacefulness beyond understanding. And it seems to me, at least for me, I'm hoping that through this work that we do together, you will leave this course with more access to that peacefulness, which is always present within you. All you have to do is access it.
We're talking about the real, the sane, the true, the eternal. We're not talking about the illusion, is the word that others have used, the earthiness, the humanity of this hatred that seems to be just like a boil coming up everywhere you look. And it's infectious, it's causing a fever, it's almost destroying the hope, that peace that we're describing, that knowing, that place we can go. This hate that's coming like a tsunami. It's almost like being shown to us. Can we hold on to each other and be a force against that by staying in this consciousness? How do we, is that what we're to do? Or do we need to go to Buffalo and hug people? Do you know what I mean? Be more engaged with the actual, or visit the shooter in prison. How do we love the shooter? How do we change the consciousness of everyone, not go in and do our own form of shooting by pushing these sources of hate away, like this shooter in Buffalo, the shooter in, what do we do with the sense that they too are part of the collective and they need to know they're loved as well? That's
Yes, they will know they are loved when they are loved. A therapist, a Cahutian, a self-psychologist, focuses on empathy, conducted group group sessions for men who had abused their daughters and their wives, their partners. And the judges said, go to jail or join this group. So they joined the group. So he conducted these group sessions for 2 or 3 years. And he said the first year, the men did not have the capacity to feel sorrow for what they had done. Because the whole theory of Cahutian self-psychology is that if you brutally suffered as a kid, your capacity stopped developing for compassion and empathy. But if you put that person in a nurturing space that's safe, the capacity becomes unblocked and it develops. So he said, second or third years, the men for the first time in their lives felt guilt for what they had done. Because they had experienced before that the compassion and empathy from others, of being heard and seen from others. So unconditional love means unconditional love, which is a capacity that we have and have to develop because we're living in a maddening world, and that's not a metaphor. So we're not being metaphorical here. We're not using similes. Look at your sentence again. Strengthen that capacity. And then you know what to do next because you have a peaceful heart. Otherwise, we're stuck in our heads trying to figure out what to do, which is impossible. That is the goal of this course, is to take that peak experience that you have, the sentence that you wrote about it, and say, hey, I've had this, perhaps 4 or 5 times in my life. I bet I could be in the state every day. What I'm trying to show to you through your own experiences, that this state is not mysterious. It's not unreachable because you've already been there. I didn't ask you to breathe deeply or meditate or enter into contemplative prayer. You wouldn't have gotten there. I simply asked you to tell me a story. So the question then for you is, how do I stay there more often? Because we're talking about a state of consciousness. It never goes away. You can turn away, but it doesn't. I read the newspaper, the New York Times, right? Because I like all the stories and everything else, and I hate it. And sometimes I have to put down the paper and simply cry. And then I go on. and I feel grateful for my tears. But I refuse to feel powerless because I know this state, this Isaac Stern state. What are you feeling right now?
I am feeling like there's a big door that's ready to open. And I'm gonna open it. But now give me that book back. Some of the hesitation to stay in this state longer is a perception that doing so removes me and takes care of me instead of changing me so I can engage with it.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
go
I
ahead.
will step in here and say your ego was on the line.
Yeah.
The difference between your ego and the I, that is that true self, that sentence that you wrote. And the ego is freaking out.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I told you, you cannot open that door. And so the ego says, well, let's talk about this a little more, okay? Does it have a doorknob?
I want to build on what Maggie said about the door. I feel like I've been in a dark room stumbling around looking for something and not knowing there was a door. And so this is something that I'm going to reflect on, because I know that I can't continue without that door, because I felt like, every day I'm like, I don't know how I continue. I'm looking for something to get me through this. So, yeah, I'm going for the door.
Marvelous, marvelous. Teresa, anything before we go on, move on?
I really like the metaphorical language that both Kat and Maggie are using. And it's interesting to me that um, I was not thinking of this as self care. Kind of, I'm perceiving that from you, Maggie, that you can't take care of this because there's that out there to take care of. And the only thing that sprang to my mind was, well, I haven't been exactly doing a great job all this time of doing it what I'm going to call for myself wrong, and not living into my joy and into my better consciousness. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to put the ego aside as much as I can and as often as it rears its ugly head, and open the door and let's do this. Yeah.
Marvelous, great, terrific. Onward we go.